Robert Duvall reveals the 6 Hollywood stars he wanted to fight. At 93, Robert Duvall stands as one of Hollywood's last living legends, the embodiment of American acting royalty whose performances in The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, and Lonesome Dove defined masculine authenticity for generations. Behind that stoic screen presence, however, burns the spirit of a fighter who doesn't suffer fools or phonies. Duvall comes from that generation where men settled differences man to man, revealed a longtime associate who's worked alongside the actor for decades. He's not some hothead picking fights, but he's got a clear code. When someone crosses a line professionally or personally, Bobby believes in confronting it directly, old school style. According to those in Duvall's inner circle, the actor has privately maintained a mental list of Hollywood figures whose behavior so thoroughly violated his professional code that physical confrontation seemed like the only appropriate response. Not passing disagreements or creative differences, but fundamental breaches of what Duvall considers the essential rules of manhood and professional conduct. There's a reason Bobby has played so many military men and cowboys, explained a former co-star. That's not acting, that's channeling. He believes in looking another man in the eye, speaking truth, and standing your ground. When someone in Hollywood violated those principles, it genuinely made his fists clench. Tonight, we reveal the 6 Hollywood stars who reportedly pushed the legendarily intense Robert Duvall to the brink of physical confrontation, a revealing glimpse into the fierce code of honor that has guided one of America's greatest actors through 6 decades in an industry not known for its integrity.
I did the majority of my own stunts in this movie, and when you see the movie, you'll see in those...
1. Kevin Costner, the director who pushed too far. When Kevin Costner cast Robert Duvall as Boss Spearman in his 2003 Western Open Range, it seemed like a perfect pairing. 2 generations of Hollywood leading men joining forces in a genre both revered. The resulting film is considered one of the finest modern westerns, but according to industry insiders, the behind-the-scenes relationship between the stars was far more combative than their on-screen partnership. Tension on Open Range. Duvall allegedly hated being directed by Costner and fought for script control, revealed a crew member who worked on the production. What looked like seamless collaboration on screen actually concealed simmering hostility that occasionally threatened to boil over into something more physical. The reported conflict stemmed from fundamentally different approaches to both acting and directing. Duvall, with his decades of experience and precise ideas about Western authenticity, allegedly found himself increasingly frustrated by Costner's directorial decisions. As both director and co-star, Costner wielded dual authority that Duvall, accustomed to being the most authoritative presence on Western sets, reportedly found difficult to accept. He respects no man who can't take a punch or a note, a production assistant overheard Duvall saying after a particularly tense disagreement over how a crucial scene should be played. Bobby felt that Costner wasn't open to his input despite his vastly greater experience in the genre. That's something Duvall couldn't tolerate, being treated as just another actor when he considered himself a guardian of Western authenticity. Specific points of contention reportedly included dialogue delivery, character motivations, and the pacing of key scenes. Duvall, known for his meticulous preparation and deep research into his roles, had apparently developed detailed backstories and behavioral traits for Boss Spearman that sometimes clashed with Costner's broader vision for the film. There was this fundamental tension between Costner's more romanticized cinematic approach to westerns and Duvall's almost documentary-like commitment to historical accuracy, explained a producer familiar with the production. Bobby would say things like, "A real cattleman from that era wouldn't say it that way," or "That's not how a man would handle that confrontation." When Costner held his ground as director, you could see Duvall's jaw tighten. According to multiple sources, the tension peaked during filming of a pivotal confrontation scene when Duvall strongly disagreed with Costner's direction, but was overruled. After the cameras stopped rolling, Duvall allegedly approached Costner with such intensity that crew members momentarily feared the disagreement might turn physical. Duvall got right in his face, recalled a camera operator who witnessed the exchange. He didn't throw a punch, but there was this moment where everyone on set froze, wondering if decades of Hollywood decorum were about to be shattered by 2 major stars actually coming to blows. You could see Duvall physically restraining himself, his hands actually clenching and unclenching at his sides. While the confrontation ultimately remained verbal, those present reported that the incident created a lasting tension that never fully dissipated throughout production. The two professionals maintained enough composure to complete a critically acclaimed film, but the experience reportedly left Duvall with lasting resentment about what he considered Costner's insufficient respect for his expertise and contributions. In Duvall's mind, it wasn't just about creative differences, said a longtime associate. It was about respect and hierarchy, a younger man not properly acknowledging the wisdom of an elder, particularly in a genre where Duvall considered himself a keeper of the flame. For someone with Bobby's old-school values, that's fighting territory. The next name on Duvall's list brings us to a clash between two wildly different approaches to the acting craft, with one method master pushing another to the breaking point.
Salesman was like the last time. Sorry, it's been a long.
2. Dustin Hoffman, Method versus Method. Robert Duvall and Dustin Hoffman emerged from the same revolutionary period in American acting. Both studied at the famed Neighborhood Playhouse in New York, both were influenced by the teachings of Sanford Meisner, and both helped redefine screen acting with their naturalistic performances in the late 1960s and 1970s. Despite these similarities, according to Hollywood insiders, their approaches to the craft and to professional conduct could not have been more different, creating tensions that reportedly pushed the normally controlled Duvall to thoughts of physical confrontation. Duvall once called him a pain-in-the-ass actor, recalled a director who has worked with both men. This wasn't just casual criticism, it reflected a fundamental philosophical divide between two titans of method acting, who represented completely different interpretations of what that approach means. The roots of the reported animosity lie in their contrasting applications of method techniques. While both actors immerse themselves deeply in their roles, Duvall has always emphasized quiet preparation, practical research, and straightforward professionalism on set. Hoffman, by contrast, became famous, or infamous, for his more externalized, sometimes disruptive approach to achieving emotional authenticity. Two method icons. Only one could walk off the set without throwing hands, said a veteran character actor who has appeared in films with both stars. Bobby sees acting as skilled labor done with dignity and minimal drama. He researches, he prepares, he delivers. Hoffman's more theatrical approach, the stories about him staying awake for days to play someone exhausted or provoking other actors to get reactions, represented everything Duvall despises about what he calls neurotic acting. This philosophical division reportedly came to a head during an industry event in the mid-1980s, when both actors were present. According to multiple witnesses, Hoffman was regaling a group with stories of his extreme preparations for various roles, including his infamous methods during Marathon Man, when he deprived himself of sleep to appear authentically exhausted, prompting co-star Laurence Olivier's famous quip, "My dear boy, why don't you try acting?" Duvall overheard this and just couldn't contain himself, remembered an attendee. He approached the group and said something like, "That's not method acting. That's just being a pain in the ass. Real actors don't need to torture themselves or everyone around them to do their job." The room went dead silent. Hoffman tried to laugh it off, but Bobby wasn't smiling. The tension between them reportedly intensified when Hoffman attempted to defend his approach, suggesting that Duvall's more restrained style might lack emotional depth. According to witnesses, this comment caused such an immediate change in Duvall's demeanor that several people moved to physically position themselves between the two actors. "Bobby got this look. Anyone who knows him recognized it," said a producer who was present. "His posture changed, his hands flexed, and for a second, it seemed very possible that two of America's most celebrated actors were about to have a fistfight at an industry gala. Cooler heads prevailed, but the energy between them was unmistakable." This fundamental disagreement reportedly extended beyond this single confrontation to a broader professional wariness. Despite both actors working steadily in Hollywood for decades, they never appeared in a film together, an absence that industry insiders suggest was no coincidence, but rather a deliberate avoidance based on mutual antipathy. "Both knew a collaboration would likely end badly," explained a casting director familiar with both men's careers. Duvall couldn't tolerate what he saw as Hoffman's self-indulgent approach to the craft, and Hoffman probably recognized that Duvall was one of the few actors of his stature who would call him out directly rather than accommodate his process. What made this tension particularly significant was that it went beyond personal dislike to represent a fundamental disagreement about the essence of their shared profession, with Duvall viewing Hoffman as embodying the worst stereotypes about method actors that undermine the dignity of the craft he held sacred. The next name brings us to perhaps the most professionally consequential feud on Duvall's list, a conflict with a fellow Godfather star that cost him millions and altered cinema history.
Well, we were teenagers together. We met in Manhattan in the 60s. No, it was actually...
3. Al Pacino, The Godfather's Broken Family. Few film franchises have achieved the legendary status of the Godfather series, with the first 2 installments routinely ranked among the greatest movies ever made. Robert Duvall's portrayal of consigliere Tom Hagen stands as one of cinema's most nuanced performances, the adopted son whose cool legal mind complements the Corleone family's more volatile temperaments. This iconic role made Duvall an essential part of what many consider Hollywood's greatest ensemble cast. Yet when The Godfather Part 3 began production in 1989, Duvall was conspicuously absent, a creative blow that many critics and fans believe contributed significantly to the final film's disappointing reception. According to Hollywood insiders, Duvall's absence stemmed from a compensation dispute that created lasting tensions with Al Pacino, his former on-screen adopted brother. They co-starred in The Godfather, but Duvall publicly complained about Pacino being overpaid in Part 3, leading to his own refusal to return, explained a producer with connections to the production. What began as a business disagreement reportedly evolved into something more personal and enduring, a sense of betrayal that cut deep for Duvall. The conflict centered around salary negotiations for the 3rd installment. Pacino, whose star had risen dramatically since the original films, commanded a reported $5 million plus a percentage of the gross. When Duvall, who considered his Tom Hagen character equally essential to the saga, was offered significantly less, he made the difficult decision to walk away from one of his most beloved roles. "You can't pay one guy $5 million and expect the rest to stay quiet," Duvall reportedly told director Francis Ford Coppola when explaining his decision. This wasn't just about money for Duvall, it was about respect, appropriate recognition of his contributions to the franchise, and a fundamental sense of fairness that he felt had been violated. What allegedly transformed this professional disappointment into more personal animosity was Duvall's perception of Pacino's role in the situation. According to those familiar with the circumstances, Duvall believed that Pacino, as the franchise's central figure with maximum leverage, could have advocated for pay equity among the original cast members, but instead negotiated solely for his own advantage. "Bobby felt betrayed," said an actor who has worked closely with Duvall. In his mind, they had created this landmark together, and Pacino was willing to let Duvall's character and their shared legacy be written out of the conclusion rather than stand up for equitable treatment. For someone with Duvall's values, that's not just a business decision, it's a character indictment. The tension reportedly surfaced at an industry event in the early 1990s, shortly after Godfather 3 was released to mixed reviews. According to multiple witnesses, when Pacino approached Duvall to greet him, the normally cordial Duvall's body language changed so dramatically that observers feared a physical confrontation might follow. "Bobby squared up like he was back in the military," recalled an attendee. "He didn't throw a punch, but everything about his posture suggested he was considering it. Instead, he just said something brief to Pacino and walked away. The chill was palpable, and everyone who saw it was talking about it for the rest of the night." While the two actors have maintained professional courtesy in public comments about each other in subsequent years, those who know Duvall well report that he has never fully reconciled himself to what he considers Pacino's failure to stand with him on principle, a betrayal of the ensemble spirit that had made the original Godfather films so extraordinary. In Duvall's worldview, men who have been through important experiences together have obligations to each other, explained a longtime friend. By accepting such a disproportionate deal without insisting his brothers be treated fairly, Pacino violated that code. For Bobby, that's not something you just forget. It's something that makes your hands ball into fists when you think about it years later. Next on Duvall's list is a modern superstar whose approach to fame represents everything the old-school actor finds objectionable about contemporary Hollywood.
Unless he was framing his mother for multiple murder.
4. Tom Cruise, the action star versus the actor. Robert Duvall's career has been defined by an unwavering commitment to authentic character development and naturalistic performance, crafting indelible portraits of complex men through subtle choices and meticulous research. Tom Cruise, while undeniably successful, has built his career on a very different foundation: high-concept action films, carefully managed public image, and spectacular physical stunts. According to Hollywood insiders, this contrast in approaches reportedly created a tension that nearly boiled over during their single professional collaboration. Duvall's old school. He's publicly mocked flashy celebrity culture and could have seen Cruise as a Hollywood actor bot, noted a cinematographer who worked on Days of Thunder, the 1990 NASCAR drama that featured both actors. Their scenes together had this fascinating undercurrent: Duvall representing an older generation of character-driven acting, Cruise embodying the new era of high-concept star vehicles. The philosophical divide between the two, reportedly extended beyond acting, approaches to encompass their entire understanding of a performer's responsibilities. For Duvall, an actor's job is to disappear into authentic characters that illuminate human truth. For Cruise, stardom has increasingly involved being a larger-than-life personality whose off-screen persona is as carefully crafted as his on-screen roles. He doesn't need stunts, he needs actors, Duvall was overheard saying after a particularly frustrating day on the Days of Thunder set. This comment encapsulated his fundamental objection to what Cruise represented: a style of filmmaking that prioritized spectacle over human authenticity, marketing over artistic substance. According to multiple sources, tensions between the two actors simmered throughout production, but nearly boiled over during filming of a crucial hospital scene. Duvall, playing a veteran crew chief to Cruise's hotshot racer, allegedly became increasingly frustrated with what he perceived as Cruise's focus on looking good on camera rather than engaging in genuine emotional exchange between the characters. "Bobby finally had enough," recalled a crew member who witnessed the incident. "Between takes, he got right in Cruise's face and said something like, 'Do you want to be remembered as a movie star or an actor? Because right now, you're just a pretty mannequin hitting marks.'" The crew froze, waiting for the explosion. Cruise looked stunned. Probably nobody had spoken to him that way in years. What prevented this confrontation from escalating further was reportedly the intervention of producer Jerry Bruckheimer, who quickly separated the actors and arranged for their remaining scenes to be filmed with minimal direct interaction. While both professionals completed the film without further incident, those present described a palpable tension whenever both were on set. There was this generational and philosophical divide that couldn't be bridged, explained an assistant director from the production. Duvall represented a tradition where actors prepared extensively, executed with minimal fuss, and let the work speak for itself. Cruise embodied the modern star system with its emphasis on image management, marketability, and the actor as a brand. They were speaking different languages. This clash of values reportedly left Duvall with a lasting distaste for what Cruise represented, not just personally, but as a symbol of how Hollywood had evolved away from the authenticity and craftsmanship he held sacred. In subsequent years, Duvall occasionally made veiled references to actors who do their own stunts because they can't do their own acting, comments widely interpreted as directed at Cruise and similar action stars. For Bobby, it's not just about disliking Cruise personally, clarified a longtime associate. It's about what he represents: a system that values spectacle over substance, image over authenticity. That's something that genuinely makes Duvall's blood boil, because he sees it as a betrayal of what acting should be. The next name on Duvall's list brings us to another intense actor with a reputation for volatility, creating a potential powder keg when their paths crossed.
It's a C company, of which I'm first sergeant. I run this outfit. Now, Captain Starles, he's the CO.
5. Sean Penn, intensity meets its match. In many ways, Robert Duvall and Sean Penn represent different generations of the same archetype, intensely committed actors known for immersing themselves completely in challenging roles and bringing an uncompromising authenticity to their performances. Both have reputations for being principled, outspoken, and occasionally difficult when their artistic standards aren't met. According to Hollywood insiders, when these two combustible forces encountered each other, the result was predictable: immediate and mutual antagonism that allegedly brought them to the brink of physical confrontation. Both intense, both alpha, both known for confrontations, summarized a director who has worked with both actors separately. From the moment they were introduced at an industry event in the mid-1990s, there was this immediate recognition, like two predators identifying each other in a crowded room. The tension was instant and unmistakable. The roots of the reported antipathy lie in their contrasting expressions of similar temperaments. Duvall channels his intensity through military-like discipline, meticulous preparation, and carefully controlled performances. Penn's intensity has traditionally been more volatile, unpredictable, and emotionally raw, accompanied by well-documented conflicts with photographers, other actors, and directors. There was only room for one powder keg on set, recalled a producer who witnessed an interaction between the two at a pre-production meeting for a film that ultimately fell apart. Some say partly due to concerns about the volatility of casting both actors. They were circling each other like fighter jets in a restricted airspace, both hyper-aware of the other's presence, both seemingly prepared for something to go wrong. The reported tensions nearly escalated during a heated disagreement about approach to a pivotal scene. According to multiple witnesses, Penn's suggestions involved a more emotionally explosive interpretation, while Duvall advocated for a more controlled, internalized performance that he felt would be more authentic to the character's military background. Penn said something dismissive about old-school stoicism being outdated, an assistant director remembered. Duvall stood up so quickly his chair fell backward. For a second, everyone in the room thought they were about to witness two generations of method-acting intensity collide physically. You could actually hear people holding their breath. What prevented the situation from escalating further was reportedly the intervention of the director and several crew members, who physically positioned themselves between the two actors while attempting to reframe the disagreement as a productive creative discussion. The tension, however, never dissipated, and the project was shelved shortly afterward, though officially for unrelated financial reasons. Bobby has this very specific trigger when it comes to younger actors who display what he considers undisciplined intensity, explained a longtime friend. He sees it as a corruption of the method approach he helped pioneer, taking the intensity without the discipline, the emotion without the control. Penn epitomized this to him, someone who had all the talent but lacked the restraint that Duvall considers essential to both acting and manhood. This fundamental philosophical disagreement reportedly extended beyond their one direct interaction to shape how each spoke about the other's work in subsequent years. While both actors have been carefully diplomatic in public comments, those close to Duvall claim he has occasionally made references to Penn as representing what happens when talent comes without discipline, a criticism that cuts to the heart of Penn's sometimes volatile reputation. The irony is that they're more similar than either would ever admit, observed a casting director familiar with both men's careers. Both are uncompromising, both put authenticity above everything else, both have occasionally difficult reputations when their standards aren't met. They're like two slightly different versions of the same intense commitment to truth, but that similarity is precisely what makes them incompatible. The final name on Duvall's list brings us back to where his legendary career truly began, and to a co-star whose off-screen behavior allegedly pushed even the disciplined Duvall to thoughts of physical confrontation.
Well, you're light. 830,000 supposed to be here, and I count what?
6. James Caan, When Sonny Pushed Tom Too Far. Robert Duvall and James Caan created cinema history together as Tom Hagen and Sonny Corleone in The Godfather. The thoughtful, restrained consigliere and the volatile, violent eldest son representing contrasting approaches to power within the Corleone family. According to Hollywood insiders, this on-screen dynamic occasionally bled into their off-screen relationship, with Caan's unpredictable, sometimes aggressive behavior reportedly testing Duvall's legendary self-control. The Godfather bros, but both had tempers and a history of off-screen aggression, explained a production assistant who worked on the iconic film. Everyone remembers Sonny's explosive violence in the movie, but few know that Caan sometimes brought similar intensity to the set, an intensity that occasionally targeted even his co-stars. The tension reportedly stemmed from Caan's tendency to remain in character between takes, bringing Sonny Corleone's volatile energy into interactions with cast and crew. While this approach created the electrifying performance that made Caan a star, it allegedly created uncomfortable situations for those around him, including Duvall, who preferred a more controlled transition between character and self. If Sonny Corleone threw a punch, Bobby wouldn't duck, a crew member overheard Duvall muttering after a particularly tense interaction during filming of a crucial scene. This wasn't just casual frustration. It reflected a genuine concern that Caan's behavior might eventually cross a line that would demand a physical response. According to multiple sources, the most serious incident occurred during filming of a scene that required multiple takes due to technical issues. As frustrations mounted, Kahn allegedly began improvising increasingly aggressive physical movements during the scene, eventually shoving Duvall with significantly more force than the script or blocking called for. Bobby took it once, twice, 3 times. Staying professional despite being visibly angered, recalled a camera operator who witnessed the interaction. After the 4th take, when Kahn shoved him hard enough to knock him against a piece of furniture, Duvall pulled him aside between takes. Nobody could hear exactly what was said, but the body language was clear. Duvall was establishing a boundary and making it clear there would be consequences if it was crossed again. This confrontation reportedly created a temporary cooling in their relationship, though both professionals maintained enough composure to complete their scenes together. What prevented the situation from escalating further was allegedly director Francis Ford Coppola's intervention, speaking with each actor separately and reworking the blocking to minimize physical contact in subsequent takes. It was this fascinating case of life imitating art, noted an assistant director from the film. Just as Tom Hagen had to manage Sonny's volatility in the story, Duvall had to navigate Kahn's intensity on set. The difference was that Duvall, unlike his character, had limits to what he would tolerate, even from someone playing his adopted brother. Despite this tension, Duvall and Kahn eventually developed a grudging mutual respect that evolved into a more genuine friendship in later years. Both recognized in the other an authentic commitment to their craft, even if their approaches and personalities sometimes clashed. This evolution from near-physical confrontation to eventual camaraderie represents a rare resolution among the relationships on Duvall's reported list. They found common ground in their shared experience of creating something historic together, explained a mutual friend. But during those tense early days, there were moments when everyone on set thought they might come to blows. It's a testament to both men's professionalism that they completed the film without an actual physical confrontation, though by some accounts, it was a very near thing.
I got a hit, Schumacher, and Ruddy doesn't count anymore. He was hoping I'd fall on my face with his Beale show, but...
The code behind the conflicts. The 6 Hollywood figures who reportedly pushed Robert Duvall to the brink of physical confrontation represent different aspects of what the legendary actor considers violations of his fundamental code, both as a performer and as a man. From Kevin Costner's perceived directorial disrespect to James Caan's on-set volatility, these conflicts reveal much about the principles that have guided Duvall through his extraordinary 6-decade career. Bobby has this consistent ethical framework that he applies to every situation, explained a director who has worked closely with Duvall on multiple projects. It's rooted in concepts that might seem old-fashioned today: respect for experience, straightforward communication, controlled strength, professional discipline. When someone violates these principles, it triggers something primitive in him, a gut-level response that sometimes bypasses his considerable self-control. This framework helps explain why Duvall, generally described as cooperative, prepared, and respectful on set, could be pushed toward thoughts of physical confrontation by certain colleagues. It wasn't random volatility, but a principled response to what he perceived as fundamental breaches of professional and personal ethics. Kevin Costner challenging his expertise on westerns, Dustin Hoffman's theatrical approach to method acting, Al Pacino seemingly betraying the ensemble spirit of The Godfather, these weren't just professional disagreements for Bobby, noted a longtime friend. They were challenges to his understanding of how men should conduct themselves, both as actors and as human beings. What makes Duvall's perspective particularly interesting is how it bridges different eras of American masculinity. Born in 1931, his formative experiences occurred in a world where physical courage and willingness to stand your ground were considered essential male attributes. Yet his acting career flourished during a period of significant cultural change, requiring him to adapt while maintaining his core principles. There's this fascinating tension in Duvall between the traditional values he was raised with and the more complex, nuanced understanding he's developed through inhabiting countless characters, observed a film historian who has studied his career extensively. He embodies a kind of evolved, traditional masculinity, one that values strength and directness, but also emotional intelligence and respect for others' dignity. This complex perspective helps explain why Duvall's reported near confrontations never actually escalated to violence. Despite the strong impulse toward physical response, his equally strong professional discipline and respect for his craft ultimately prevailed, allowing him to establish boundaries firmly without crossing the line into actual aggression. Bobby found ways to make his position clear without throwing the punch he might have been contemplating, said a producer who witnessed one such confrontation. That restraint isn't weakness. It's a different kind of strength that comes from confidence in your principles and understanding that actions have consequences.
And comes November 14, I'm going to be standing up there at the annual CCA Management Review meeting.
The man behind the legend. Beyond the specific conflicts with fellow actors, Duvall's reported willingness to consider physical confrontation offers a window into the authentic person behind his legendary performances. A man whose on-screen intensity reflects genuine passion rather than merely skilled technique. Unlike some actors who construct elaborate personas or lose themselves in their characters, Duvall has maintained a remarkable consistency between his professional and personal identities throughout his career. His performances feel authentic because they emerge from a man who values authenticity above all else, someone unwilling to pretend in life or on screen. What you see with Bobby is what you get, emphasized a longtime friend. The directness, the intensity, the unwillingness to suffer fools, these aren't affectations or performance elements. They're the actual man showing through his work. That's why he's had these conflicts over the years, because he can't separate himself from his principles, even when it might be professionally advantageous to do so. This authenticity extends to how Duvall approaches conflict itself. Unlike many in Hollywood who rely on intermediaries, passive-aggressive signals, or behind-the-back complaints, Duvall reportedly addresses problems directly, sometimes with a bluntness that can shock those accustomed to the industry's more diplomatic facades. Bobby doesn't do subtext in real life, noted a director who has worked with him multiple times. If he has a problem with you, you'll know it. Directly, specifically, and immediately. That approach has sometimes created tensions in an industry built on artificial pleasantries, but it has also earned him extraordinary respect. People always know exactly where they stand with him. As Duvall enters his 90s, this no-nonsense approach to professional relationships has become an increasingly rare quality in Hollywood, a throwback to an era when conflicts were addressed directly rather than managed through representatives or played out in social media. His willingness to confront problems immediately, even at the risk of physical escalation, represents a value system that has largely disappeared from contemporary professional culture. There's something almost refreshing about Bobby's approach, reflected a younger actor who worked with Duvall on a recent project. No passive-aggressive comments, no triangulation through agents or managers, no cultivated mystique. If he has an issue with your performance or behavior, he'll tell you to your face, and yes, occasionally look like he might back up those words with action if pushed too far. It's intimidating, but also clarifying. You always know exactly what he thinks and where you stand. This clarity extends to Duvall's relationships with those he respects, the many collaborators, co-stars, and crew members who have experienced his loyalty, generosity, and professional support throughout the decades. The same directness that can make him a formidable adversary also makes him an invaluable ally and mentor. For every person who's felt Bobby's anger, there are dozens who've experienced his generosity and support, emphasized a character actor who considers Duvall a mentor. He fights for fellow actors, stands up for crew members, and defends the integrity of projects he believes in. The same principles that have occasionally led him to conflict have far more often made him one of the most respected and beloved figures in the industry. In this context, Duvall's reported willingness to consider physical confrontation with certain colleagues represents not a character flaw, but a consistent expression of values, a belief that some principles are worth fighting for, literally if necessary. While this approach may seem anachronistic in contemporary professional culture, it reveals much about the authentic character behind the legendary performances. At 90 plus, Bobby still believes some things are worth standing up for, even if standing up might mean squaring off, concluded a longtime friend. That's not just his generation speaking. That's the man himself, a direct, authentic presence in an industry often lacking both qualities. Thank you, members.